Welcome back, friends, to Holy Pastor Doing Stuff, your one-stop shop for learning how to do life the holy way. This time, how to do self-care. And we have with us the Pastor Kristabeth Atwood, founder of Rites of Passage, LLC, spiritual support, especially for those experiencing life's transitions or exploring life's big questions. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Holy Pastor. It's an honor to be here. I enjoy watching your show, and I'm just glad that you thought that I could contribute something to your audience. So thank you for inviting me here today.
Absolutely. My show is pretty great, and an extra 1,000 holiness points to you for mentioning how much you enjoy it. Now, I have to admit, I was told I should do a show on self-care, but I have no idea what it is because every morning I wake up to a choir of angels singing just for me, and every night I go to bed, the angel Gabriel himself gives me a back massage. So what exactly is self-care?
Well, I'm not surprised to hear that that's how your morning and your evening go, because you are the Holy Pastor. And that's really a great way to start and end your day. But for those of us who are less holy, I think we have to be more deliberate about our self-care. So self-care is taking care of ourselves spiritually, emotionally, and physically, making sure that we're connecting with God, that we're connecting with the people around us, and that we're connecting with our bodies and honoring what our bodies need in terms of, physical care, exercise, good food. So it's being aware on many levels of what we need and how we can support that so we can continue to grow in our faith and in our lives.
Gotcha. So I I see that there would be some reason why you would start rites of passage to help people with that self-care. I've always known that I don't need rites of passage because I always have the right of way. I mean, people are just blinded by my holiness if they try cutting me off. And in fact, there was one time at the grocery store where a man almost stepped out of the aisle and cut me off, but he saw me with my clergy collar. He stepped back and he bowed his head and said, "I'm so sorry, Father. Go right ahead." I didn't even have kids yet, so I didn't know what was going on. But is that what you do at Rites of Passage, trying to teach people who has the spiritual right of way, like a driver's ed type of thing?
Well, that's not really how I would describe it. At Rites of Passage, we believe that everyone has a right of way. And I guess that's, a way to say that everybody has their own way of connecting with God and connecting with each other. One person's way might not be so effective for another person. So, even though you have the right of way, Holy Pastor, I'm not surprised that you experience that. But, for those of us who maybe struggle to find our right of way or the right way for us, I help people to think more deeply about how they can connect and be nurtured in their lives.
So it's not my way or hell. Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't think that was true. I think that God creates each of us to be unique. So that means that we connect with God in unique ways. So we can't look to just one person's way to find the right way, because we all have our own right way. It's just a matter of finding it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I still think my way is, at the very least, the best way, because my way is Jesus's way. And you might remember that Jesus, already at the age of 12, he was in the synagogue and he was teaching everyone else. They were trying to teach him, and he said, "No, I got this." And then his parents found him and said, "Hey, you can't make us worry like that. And Jesus was all like, I'm the son of God. I don't need no parents or anyone to teach me what's happening in life. So, you know, isn't Jesus's way the only way, and every other way is sinfulness or weakness?
Well, I wouldn't really agree with that. I would say that taking care of ourselves is in no way sinful or weak, but is actually faithful and strong. Um, and I love that story that you shared about Jesus in the temple. I just, I like to think about that, 12-year-old Jesus in there with the elders. Um, and, I can imagine maybe that was you that when you were 12 years old,
Indeed.
teaching and expounding on the scriptures. Um, but I think that Jesus also gives us many other examples in his life of how to, live fully. And, our Christian tradition tells us that Jesus was both fully human and fully divine. And as a human, Jesus needed to take care of himself. We have stories in the Bible of Jesus withdrawing away from the disciples to pray. One of my favorite stories is Jesus taking a nap in the back of the boat when the disciples began to freak out because there was a storm and Jesus was sleeping. And I just love that Jesus trusted the disciples enough to let them take care of that part, and was able to go back and rest. And then when they did call on him, he had been rejuvenated or renewed enough to be able to step out and do what he needed to do. And then the other scripture I think of is Jesus in the garden right before his crucifixion, when he asked the disciples to keep watch for him. And, we know that didn't turn out so great, but, Jesus called on God and, asked God's presence in that moment. And, Jesus expressed the human emotion of, why is this happening to me? So I think that, kind of those examples of Jesus are what I try to follow, that Jesus knew his limits. He knew when he needed to have rest and time alone and connect with God, connect with his Father. And that helps me to know that that's okay when I need to do those things too. And when the people I work with need to do those things.
So the Bible score is 3 Kristabeth, 1 holy pastor. So remind me to never invite other clergy onto the show ever again, because I don't like being challenged on the Bible. But let's change the subject a little bit. Do you have any stories of breakthroughs or anything like that to prove that this radical theory of self-care is worthwhile?
Mm-hmm. Well, personally, I'd like to share out of my own experience, because the people that I work with, those are their stories, and I want to honor that. But I can share with you an experience I had a few years ago when I was serving a church as a pastor. And, I certainly wasn't as holy as you are, but I did my best. And I came to a point where I started to feel, burned out and uninspired in my work. And, I kind of held that in and didn't tell anyone for a while, because I felt, embarrassed and ashamed that I was feeling that way. But then upon reflection, after holding it in didn't help, and it actually made it worse. And I, became more burned out and depressed. I realized that I had to reach out to people, to my friends, my support system. So I reached out and started confiding in some people what I was feeling. I realized that, in my state of feeling burned out and depressed, I wasn't taking care of myself physically. So I started to pay more attention to that, to exercise and eating right. And I went on a retreat. I went away for a few days just to spend time in silence. And I was able to connect with God and could hear that God was telling me that it was time for me to do something new in my life, to step away from the church, the congregation that I loved, and to start a new journey. So that was a very painful process of leaving, ministry that I had been in for 18 years and that particular congregation where I had been for 9 years. But I was able to do it with joy, because I did honor my physical and spiritual and emotional needs, and was able to connect with the congregation and community in the process of saying goodbye. So that was kind of a breakthrough for me. And now I'm doing this work where I get to talk with people about these subjects that I'm really passionate about. I get to talk to people like you. And so I just feel like I listen to God's voice in my life, and I can feel the fruits of that and the joy in what I do today.
Well, and I appreciate that story, and I appreciate as well your mentioning so often how holy I am. You're absolutely right, and if I can take the risk and bring up the Bible again, you know how it says that Moses was the only one to be able to see and speak to God face to face without dying. Well, I'm the next person to be able to do it. That's how holy I am. And so I don't really have any other advice for people of how to self-care other than to be like me. And you mentioned some things already, like exercise and silence and retreat. But are there any other things you haven't mentioned so far that you might suggest to people as means of self-care?
Well, first, let me say that if anyone's going to be the next one to see the face of God, it will definitely be you. So I look forward to hearing about that. And in terms of other ways of self-care, it's really so individual. Kind of the cliche around self-care is that it's bubble baths, and there's so much more to self-care than that. And each of us, as I had mentioned earlier, has our own way, so we have to find that way. So some things could be, for some people it might be spending time with their pets, or for other people it might be adventure hiking, or who knows what, going to different farmers markets or restaurants, trying different food. Each person has their own way of rejuvenating, of connecting with God. So like an example from one person that I've worked with is, in her experience, just lighting a candle before dinner was an act of self-care, because that helped her acknowledge God's presence in the meal that she was eating. So what I do when I work with people is kind of brainstorm and have them, kind of come up with some ways that they might take care of themselves, and then give those a try. And those might not work, but we come back together and think of new ones. So it's kind of trial and error, but it's so worth it. And as Americans, we're taught the Protestant work ethic, and when we spend so much time working and not taking care of ourselves, when we begin to realize that we do need to take care of ourselves, it might take some time to figure out what that means for each person.
Yeah, and I was gonna say that I always thought that working harder is the answer to life's problems, but maybe not. Maybe it's self-care. And I'm beginning to realize, when I was talking about right of way earlier in the driving sense, that that's right, RIGHT, and we're talking about rights, RITES, things that help us through life. And would you say that those things that we do to take care of ourselves are more important than working harder?
Well, I would say that the things that we do to take care of ourselves help us to work more productively and joyfully. So it's really essential to, our work life, our family life, our spiritual life, really all aspects of our lives. And I'm just reminded of in the Bible where, in creation, God gives us the gift of the Sabbath. And that's a reminder that we're not to work, 7 days a week, that we do need time to rest. We need time, the earth needs time to rest. The animals need time to rest. Everything is included in the Sabbath. So, I think that we can't just work, that in order to live fully, we need to balance that. And I'm also reminded of a quote from Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who tells us that we are to rest as if our work were done. So just acknowledging that there's always more work to do. There's always something else we can do in our work life. But sometimes, we need to set that aside. God tells us at least once a week, we need to set that aside and just rest and enjoy this beautiful creation that God has given us.
Yeah, well, you've persuaded me certainly that these habits and routines and rites of self-care are certainly important and holy. And I was thinking, you said you wanted to hear about what seeing God face to face is like. I'm looking for a pen. Let me get a pen, and I will draw you what God looks like. How about that?
Oh, okay. Sounds good.
So, friends at home, that is how you care for yourself the holy way. And thank you so much, Pastor Kristabeth Atwood, for your help today. And you at home can check out her work and her business, and perhaps also journey along with her on Facebook or her website at rightsofpassagevt.com. And again, that's right, RITE, rightsofpassagevt.com. This is what God looks like.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty special.
Mm.
So thank you. And for now, Holy Pastor is off to his second job, which I guess today will be taking a nap like Jesus. Until next time, keep it holy, friends.